Okay, now we have all of our prep work done and we're ready to dive in here and start sculpting our digital clay. First I'll click on the top view in the view cube so that we can look at this thing from one particular isometric perspective. You may find it easier to work orthographically here so that we don't get the slight appearance of lines diverting from their true orientation. And now we'll get down to business. So there's a couple ways to select out areas for modification when it comes to messing around with T-splines. The first is if I double-click a line, then the entire line will show up, and that division is going to travel all the way around the body of my object. I can also click on a single surface, and you'll see that that surface is mirrored over here on the other side. That was that mirroring function that we chose when we made the box to begin with. I can also pick an entire ring of surfaces if I click and then shift-click in a particular direction. So that'll give me just these fellas on top, but if I do this and then shift-double-click, then I get the full ring, and that'll work for the other axis too. So shift-double-click, and we get those two rings. It's also possible to select and edit individual divisions, and it's possible to add and subtract divisions as we go. So this gets quite complicated, and I think there's really no other way around it than just practice, but let me go ahead and try to give you some examples of how to do this. So we'll head back here to the top, and the first thing I'll do is start to squeeze down these areas. So if I drag a selection box from right to left, I'm able to select what appears to be everything on the nose, but if I head back out here to the home button, you'll see that only a limited number of those is the case. So I may have to select these out by hand. Once they're selected, I'll head back to top. And now I'll pick this really fully featured and honestly pretty confusing tool right here, which is Edit Form, that it's only available when you're in the Sculpt workspace. So I'll click on Edit Form, and then I have a ton of options, but for right now we're going to stick to these visual options. So first of all, it's possible to drag with the arrow, right? So I'm going to get a movement of the location of those guys right there, those faces. And I can also do this sideways, and you see that's when the mirroring starts to take effect. I can use this area right here to move on a plane, so I'm not just restricted to one or the other. And sometimes as you start to demo these, the changes stack up, so I'll hit cancel and modify it again. Now what I'm really looking for is this line right here, which allows me to select an edge. So as I drag that in, I get something a lot closer to what I want. And you'll notice if I go too far, sometimes it'll kind of max out and refuse to carry on. It's also possible that my lines will start to double over. It's not always possible that you can edit an area and get it looking exactly as you want the first time out, because all T-spline shapes are based on their neighboring faces and edges. So often we just need to get close and then to come back and edit things over and over again. So let's hit OK and say that that's good enough for now. And I constantly want to be checking to make sure that as I'm making these edits, I'm not getting crazy pinches or things aren't doubling over that'll lead to geometry errors later on. So next up, because we just edited a group of faces, let's try grabbing a ring of edges. Again, I'll select Modify, and I'll just use that same tool right here, sort of suck that down. So this should go pretty quick. Grab this ring, modify, and so forth. So this should be interesting right here, and you can see that this curve starts to move in a convex and then a concave fashion, well, depending on your point of view, and yet I only have one ring here with which to control it. So let's give that a try and see if that's good enough. We'll do the same thing. So we can see here now that we're going to require a higher degree of subdivisions in this area in order to get that degree of control, and we'll cover that in the next video.